and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins, and the program is Black America. My guest today is Raven Jemison, Executive Vice President of Business Operations for the NBA Milwaukee Bucks. Yay! Raven has managed multi-million-dollar business operations, was named one of the most powerful women in sports in 2021 by Adweek, received the Game Changer Award in 2022 by Sports Business Journal, and joins us to discuss her upcoming book, More Than Representation: Cheat Codes to Own Your Seat at the Table. You don't want to just borrow someone's table. You want to own your own seat.
That's 100% correct. Own it all the way.
Raven, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And the book is fantastic. As you should know, I was very honored to write a blurb for it. You know, after I read it, I said, without question. And we're both from Alabama too. So tell us a little bit about Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and how you got through Brooklyn to Milwaukee.
Yeah, the heart of Dixie. Tuscaloosa, born and raised, but I have to be very clear that I graduated from Auburn University, because if you know enough about Alabama, there's really two universities there that despise each other, one of which is in Tuscaloosa, which I won't even mention, and there's Auburn University, which I'm a proud graduate of.
Right.
I started thinking that I was going to be an optometrist, so we can talk a little bit more about that.
And I need you right now.
Yeah. I can call somebody. I definitely can't help you today.
Great.
But sports was where my passion and my purpose interceded. I started with the Florida Panthers down in South Florida, spent some time there before heading to the Pittsburgh Pirates for some time, headed across the country to San Francisco with the San Francisco 49ers, with the Levi's Stadium project as they were building their new stadium back in 2015. Then back to New York for the NBA League office, where I was in the in-house consulting group for 6 seasons before making my way to Milwaukee, where I am now with the Milwaukee Bucks. So it's been a heck of a journey.
And that's an 18-year span.
18 years, correct.
Crisscrossing the country and working your way up. So for our audience members who may not know, I mean, they may love basketball and watching and knowing what happens in the front of the house, so to speak, but not understanding what is going on behind the scenes. And when we say you are, managing big budgets, there's a lot of money involved here and a lot of oversight that's required.
Yeah. So a lot of people see the glitz and glam in front of the camera, the product, which is great basketball, or in my case, basketball or football or baseball or hockey. But the thing that keeps me employed is making sure that people are actually in the arena watching the product, or that sponsors are sponsoring the product, or that we are marketing the product such that more people want to watch it, or internationally, as we think about the eyeballs on our sport from an international perspective. So those are the things that happen behind the scenes to make the engine go. And I always say that it is our job to not think about team performance, because we don't have that luxury, right? At the end of the day, the players do what they do. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but it is our job to make sure that the building is packed and that we are creating the best home court advantage in all of sports, whatever sport that may be. So there's a lot of work done behind the scenes to make sure that the actual product can be seen or can be participated in, I guess, and that's my responsibility.
So you're managing the bottom line.
Correct, the bottom line, no question.
Right. And how big of a staff is involved behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I think that's a big misconception, actually, in sports. So on paper, we could be valued in the billions, right? So you think about other billion-dollar companies might have tens of thousands of employees, whereas the Bucks, we only have 300 employees. So 300 employees full-time make the engine go, alongside roughly less than 1,000 part-time employees. So it's not a ton of people when you think about the scope of what actually has to happen, but there's still 300 people that need to be led and managed day in and day out.
Right. So you're in charge of those folks and watching the bottom line.
Yeah.
And for those who are looking at you and thinking, gee, I would love to do that. Forget about optometry.
Yeah.
What's the educational path for that?
Yeah, so I actually got a degree in exercise science because I am a type A minus, type A. I want to be very clear that I am reformed type A. I like to have a plan C. I like to have a plan D. So the original plan was optometry school. I got a degree that would allow me to be flexible, flexible enough so if optometry school wasn't the path, I could go back and get a PhD. So my path, I just had a business minor. There's different paths to get into this business. There's now sport management degrees, which weren't a thing when I was in college so many years ago.
Right.
So I had to kind of figure out that path for myself. But the truth is, I started at the very bottom, and a degree was good enough. When I was starting in inside sales at the very bottom, making $7.25 an hour.
$7.25 an hour, and you were in, I can imagine, a cubicle. And what were you doing every day for that?
I was picking up the phone
Right.
at least 100 times a day to
Right.
try to get people to buy hockey tickets in Florida. So that was the first job. If you know Florida, not necessarily the hotbed for hockey, but you learn how to sell very quickly when the product is challenging to sell, and you develop the skills that you need to be successful, which I'm glad, right? If I had started for a Canadian team selling hockey, probably wouldn't have developed the chops that I needed to be successful.
Hockey in Florida,
Hockey
right?
in Florida.
Well, pity the poor person who picked up the phone
Right.
against Raven, right?
That's right.
Yes,
That's
of
right.
course, I'm coming to a game.
That's exactly right.
So tell us about your uncle Andre, who was influential in this
Yeah.
educational work path for you.
Yeah, my uncle Andre. So he was 16. He has since passed, and I miss him greatly because he was a great example for me. But he was about 16 years older than me, my mom's youngest brother. And when it came to college, I had some idea of what college could be. And I mentioned this in the book. You had A Different World, which was so prominent, which was a spinoff of The Cosby Show that was kind of in the coming of age in my time.
Right, right. And I remember the sweaters. That was very
Hillman
important.
College. That's right. And the Coogee
Right, right.
sweaters. But A Different World was kind of my experience into college. But at the same time, my uncle was the first person in our family to go and graduate from college. And he was brilliant. I mean, he was great in math and science. I used him quite a bit to help me through a lot of my hard AP math classes in high school. But he was just the example. And, you know, we talk about representation. He was that first representation that I saw that this is possible, regardless of, you know, where you come from, what you have access to. If you go to college, it can open up a number of doors for you. And he, you know, he went on to get his first degree in nursing. Then he got a second degree in mechanical engineering. And then he got a third degree in a master's degree in nursing. And it was just so important for me to see him do this, coming from the cycles of poverty that, you know, my mom and her siblings grew up in. And he carved a path, and I walked right through it.
Well, and so you are representation for so many in the sports world, the business world, the accolades that you've gotten, and the way that you've been able to move up. And especially since you describe yourself as Black, a woman, and queer.
That's right.
And those are any of those three things would have stopped you in your tracks long ago.
Right.
And so talk about moving in the space really, truly authentic as yourself.
Yeah. Oh, how much time do we have?
We have about 20 more minutes left.
At any given time, I am another, right? So you add now Black, queer woman. I am an other multiple times over. And I felt it was important as I was starting my career. I kind of looked back on my gymnastics career because I started as a gymnast at a very young age, and I did that for 10 years. And it helped kind of prepare me for the life that was being the only one in business. I was the only Black person in my AP high school classes. I was one of 3 Black students in the pre-optometry curriculum. So that prepared me to be in these spaces. But it's challenging, no question, but it is important to do the work. And I always felt like, regardless of how I show up, I want to show up as myself first. And then you will get the best quality work from me, and I can be productive for you. But I had to do that work first, and it took a while. My first job with the Florida Panthers, I was in the closet. I was struggling, and it's hard enough to be a Black person in corporate America. But now I'm hiding another part of myself. So I'm a Black woman, and I'm hiding the fact that I'm also a gay woman. So that was a full-time job within itself. But doing the work to become comfortable in my skin was something that had to happen because I did not want someone else telling me who I was, because I did want to make it to the C-suite. But what good is being in the C-suite if you're somebody else? And you look back in the 18 years and you're like, well, who was I and how did I even do that? And was I this person when I was doing it? It's too much work. So I felt like it was important, if I was going to make it to the top, I only wanted to do it as myself. So the journey has been interesting. It's been challenging. As I was writing this book, a lot of tears. It was a means of catharsis for me because I repressed quite a bit. To even write this book, I went through all my journals. So I started journaling when I started in sports business. And you realize when you go back years,
Right.
there's things you just repress.
Right.
And you're like, wow, I didn't even know that, but hopefully it helps someone. So to answer your question, the journey's been difficult, but definitely rewarding.
Difficult, but rewarding. Well, let's talk about, because what you do point out is that while representation is great, it's not enough.
Exactly.
And so that therefore, and you encountered a young woman who said to you, you know, how did you get where you are? And you realized that you really didn't have the answers that she needed to truly do it. So let's talk about the codes that you're providing in the book. What's the very first thing that you need to do? What's the first cheat code you call it?
Know yourself to know your worth. And the cheat codes are written in a particular order, and that's intentional, right? Because the first cheat code of knowing yourself to know your worth, going back to what I just said, if you don't know who you are and what you bring to the table, I always say that your uniqueness is your superpower. And if you lean into that, you know that whatever you're bringing, no one else can bring that. So that in and of itself is valuable. So leaning into really understanding who you are and what makes you unique enough for a company to say, yes, I want Raven to work here because she brings X, Y, and Z that this candidate can't or that this person can't. And sometimes being a Black woman offers that uniqueness. Sometimes being a woman offers that uniqueness. Sometimes being queer, right? So you lean into the things that make you you, such that you can really, when you sit down across from your boss and it's time for promotion time, you can write down all the things and articulate that very clearly, because you've done the work to realize that there's no one else like you, and you're not going to get the work from somebody else that you can get from me.
Yeah, so it seems to me that the journaling, the writing it down, is an important key to keeping track of what you've repressed, what you've done.
That's right.
That other people may not know that you've done.
That's
so you need a document in a sense. Cheat code number 2.
Yeah. Find your people. So again, if you're talking about the sequential order of this, know yourself. There's going to be some hard days. There's going to be some tough days. But if you surround yourself with the right people who are saying yes to you, of course, but also, as I say, the people who are telling you about yourself and showing you about yourself, if you don't have people in your life that are equally as challenging to you as the people that say yes to you, you're just living in an echo chamber, right? You're not really growing. You're not learning. You're not stretching yourself. And I have a lot of people in my life that don't look like me, that don't love like me, and that's intentional. I have people in my life that are in my family that have told me about myself, that I work too much, that I'm missing out on key moments in life. And I need to hear that sometimes, because it's the proverbial punch in the face that sometimes you might need to kind of break through.
Right, and was an important part of your journey as well. You know, it's when you say you're the A-, you know, I would say you had been an A++.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
I mean, that is true. Code number 3.
Code number 3 is arguably the most important one, which is pause, reflect, and reinvest. And that is because I have gone through quite a bit and I realized what I was repressing. I had a moment a few years ago as I was starting with the Bucks where I broke. Right. The things that I was repressing, the weight of being the strong Black woman, the weight of representing for so many people and having the stress of like, I have to perform and I have to be perfect such that the person behind me has it easier. I was like really taking the whole Black girl magic and Black excellence thing to like the next level. And that was to the detriment of my mental health. And so I reached a point where I said, if I don't stop and just pause and really take a moment to think, not only think about where I am today, but celebrate. I don't celebrate anything. Or to that point, I get a promotion, yay, I was supposed to get a promotion, so what's next, right? Like, I never really sat in the successes of my life. So I made a choice to forego a very important work event in our industry, which is All-Star Game 2021, it would have been 2022. And I said, I'm not going to go. And I'm going to spend time to really sit with myself and figure out what I need to do such that I can be even more productive moving forward. And it needed to start with me taking a moment to celebrate what I've done, but also figure out ways to cope better with the stresses in my life.
That in the book was a very, moving section, for you struggling with yourself.
Yeah.
To know that you had broken, because many of us don't even know when we've gone past that point.
That's right.
So the healing part of that.
Yeah.
And so you missed an all-star convention, but you saved your life.
That's exactly right. And I saved my marriage. I saved my relationship with my mom and my sister because I was like going 90 miles an hour. And I read this on Instagram, which is, the proverbial find
the Bible, right.
Yes, the Bible. But it really hit me, and it's rare that things on Instagram hit me, but it said, too often we think that we have this much time with our parents. Like my parents, my mom is getting older, my in-laws are getting older. But the truth is you only have so many more moments with your parents or with your family. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, I've never lived in the city where my mom is. Mm-hmm. And each time I get with her, should be precious. I should be present. So it's things like that remind you, like, time is not, it's a gift, but taking it for granted is definitely not smart.
Right.
Yeah.
That was powerful. And then the next code, after you've stopped and reinvested in yourself,
right,
and in your circle, and in the things that matter to you.
Yeah, so the fourth one is one that we all hate to talk about, but the fourth one is understand that politics isn't only for politicians. And if anyone has ever tried to do anything spectacular or tried to climb the ladder, politics is at every turn, whether we want to admit it or not. And I was somebody who ran from it because, again, we say to ourselves, oh, if I work hard, they'll notice. Or if I show up at work and I'm the last person to leave, they'll notice, when that's just not the way things work. And no one told me that. I had to learn it the hard way. And I'm hoping that when people read this book that they see that I learned, but I tried to navigate it in a way that I still remain authentic to myself. I'm not going to change myself to play politics, but there's a way that you can play it, because there is a game that needs to be played, but you can play it in the way that you can still put your head down on the pillow at night.
So authentically, but you do have to play the game. My sister was giving, kid sisters are this way, was giving me advice about my rotten personality and how I had to change if when she was talking politics. Being more political.
That's right. And you hear all the time, oh, the man is keeping me down or whatever it is, but the man is playing a game that you might need to learn how to play if you want to be in that space. And it's not, again, not for the sake of your integrity. I want to be very clear. But I also learned as I was coming up through the sports industry that there were people who knew how to play these games, and I had no idea.
Right.
So that's that other piece about representation is like giving you access to information. There's people playing the game, so you can either hop in the game or you can stay on the sidelines, but don't complain when things aren't going your way.
But is that the code switching? Is that what?
It's not necessarily code switching as much as it is, because you want to remain yourself, right? It is understanding what your environment is and how you can survive and thrive in it, not just survive in it and not just thrive in it. Like, how can you, again, bring your full self and say, I am aware that this is happening, but here's how I'm going to exist in this space. And if it is to the point, and I talk about this in the book, there's like 4 different types of political environments. If it's pathologically political, probably shouldn't be there. I wouldn't want to be there. But there are a level of politics everywhere you go.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to listen to you and my kid sister, right?
Okay. Yeah. You don't have a rotten personality. It's amazing, Carol. I know what she's talking about. I'm not on her side there.
All right. Thanks, Raven. Okay. I'm going to tell her. Holly, you hear that?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the next code, and now I want to say that even though you are giving us the codes, there is so much more in this book that you will want to read. You will want to see the context of it and what Raven went through in order to get where she is now.
Yeah. So the last cheat code is collect advocates. So
Right.
you've done the work, you know who you are, you've surrounded yourself with people that will support you and tell you who you are, agnostic of your job. You've taken the time to reflect and celebrate successes. You're thriving in a political environment, but you still want the promotion and you don't know how quite to get there. Advocates have been the sole reason why I've been able to advance in my career in 18 years, which we were just talking about, has been relatively quick, which I'm very blessed to say, but it's been only because people have spoken up for me in rooms that I'm not in. And people have pushed me to be prepared to be in those rooms when I get there. So collecting advocates is probably, I said all these are important, but it's pretty important if you want to advance up the ladder. No one gets there by themselves.
I know, but that's a pretty hard thing to do.
It is.
I mean,
it is.
I would say perhaps the hardest
Yeah.
of all of the codes,
Yep.
because it's not only up to you. You have to convince someone that you're worthy
Yep.
to be spoken up for, to be promoted for. Go in that room, and when they're talking about who's going to be the next boss,
Yep.
bring my name up. So how do you?
Yeah, so there's a chapter in the book that I call, that we talk about making it worth their while. I'm not going to say no one. Most people don't do things that don't also benefit themselves. So how I've been able to position myself is anywhere I am with you, I'm going to make you better. I'm going to make the situation better. So if they're saying you should get this job, it's also going to make them look good, right? So I've tried to articulate the value, again, the unique value that I add, such that when you say I'm ready for this promotion, not only are you going to look good because you said I should have gotten here,
Right.
but I'm going to help you look good along the way. So it's definitely not easy, and it takes time to develop and nurture relationships, and they should be authentic relationships. I want to be very clear that
Not transactional.
not transactional. That's a big no-no.
Right.
Collecting advocates is not about necessarily trying to use people. It should
Right.
be mutually beneficial. They should know that when they need something from you, that you're also going to deliver, which is making them look good. So that's what I mean by making it worth their while.
Well, the book is fantastic.
Thank
you
you,
know,
Carol.
as I say, you know, that you're very generous in the way you're sharing your life and the right steps and wrong steps and how you did it. What about women, other women generally in the sports arena now, so to speak? How do you categorize progress that's been made and not?
Yeah, we are definitely farther than where we were 18 years when I started. There were no examples. When I was looking for examples of who was running teams or who was at that president or CEO level. And now in the NBA, we have 3 women that are running sports teams, running NBA teams in particular. It's definitely progressed. Are we where we need to be? Absolutely not. But it is much better than it used to be 18, 20 years ago, where I think we will see the growth and see the advancement is when, honestly, people just say, this person needs to be in this seat because they're qualified, and because there's plenty of number 2s. I'm considered a number 2. I know several other women that are number 2s. We will eventually get our spot, but I think it's just a matter of when we get there, we're also bringing folks up behind us. One of the things that I've been focused on in this role is hiring diverse talent, qualified diverse talent in some of the non-traditional roles. So our head of business strategy and analytics is a woman, traditionally held by men. Our head of ticketing was a woman who she's since left to go somewhere else. But I've tried to be very intentional about the hiring such that we can give more women access to the information, access to what it means to sit at the table and to own that seat at the table. So some of it's going to be actually people just making the hire, but the rest of it, honestly, is going to be up to us who actually have a seat at the table and are reaching back and making sure we're providing the access.
Right. Because what we've seen so often in corporate America, not just sports, is that once that first woman leaves, she's generally not replaced by another woman.
That's exactly
so
right.
we go right back to
That's exactly right.
0 or 1.
Yep.
So I'm
Yep.
so glad you're doing that. Listen, we of course both love Audre Lorde, and you
Yes.
use one of her quotes: "If I didn't define myself, I would be crumbled into other people's fantasies for me or of me and eaten alive."
It's that first cheat code we talked about. I knew, even though I was young and I definitely was not mature enough to really make this decision wholeheartedly, but I knew that I did not want to be someone else. It is exhausting. And I opened up one of the chapters saying, it is exhausting being someone else. And I lived that firsthand when I started with the Florida Panthers. If you literally don't define yourself for yourself, they will define you. And I'm not sure that I really want to live in a world, especially the short time we're given, being what somebody else thinks I should be or what they think I am. So that quote to me says it all.
You wrote this book as a love letter to your younger self.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. As I've mentioned before, I didn't set out to write a book. I set out to get an answer to a question that I had received multiple times. And going through the journals that I'd written, I realized, again, that I had been repressing some things, and I just kind of just brushed over the fact that a lot of things had happened to me to put me in certain situations that I just didn't deal with, which caused me, again, to start writing this book and looking back towards my youth, especially when I started in gymnastics at 4 years old, and I did that for 10 years, and I was the only Black girl on this team, and I realized that there were a lot of things that this young girl would have loved to have been told as she was going through some of the things she was going through. Again, being the only one, but being the one that wasn't the tiny, petite gymnast that you may have seen Mary Lou Retton be back in the 80s, who hated her thighs because they were super muscular, or the one who, quite frankly, didn't think that Black was beautiful back in the day because her, white friends didn't really say that she belonged, and the Black friends said, oh, you're acting this way because you talk this way, or whatever it may be. And I felt like as I was writing this book, I was thinking about her, to be honest. There's things that if I could just tell her, one, you're going to be okay, and two, you're going to be more than okay, because there's things you're going to encounter in this life that you never dreamed of. And the things that you're going through right now are going to prepare you for that. So just be patient. So that was, as I was thinking about writing this book, those are the things that I was thinking about. And I hope I'm making her proud.
Thanks so much for
Carol.
being with us today. Everybody, get the book. Raven Jemison, Executive Vice President of Business Operations for the NBA Milwaukee Bucks. They're doing pretty good. And author of More Than Representation, Cheat Codes to Own Your Own Seat at the Table. It's truly a book we all need to help us be our own authentic selves, to push you and me to believe in ourselves and to go after that seat that you deserve. That's it for us today at this time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. See you the next time.